Yeah. Well, everybody
yeah.
is.
Really? I thought it was just me.
We all know you are. Pretty much. Wouldn't put anything past you.
March 18th, 2015 meeting of the Milton School Committee will come to order. As is our tradition, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our country. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On the agenda, we have a few changes. We will be, under Chairman's report, I'm going to talk about a designation that MASC has asked us to make, and this has been included in a couple of the communications that they've sent to us, which should be familiar, but I have copies if you don't recall it. Under Finance Subcommittee, we're going to move the full-day kindergarten update until our next meeting. We do not have executive session items this meeting. We should have 2 next meeting. And I think that does it.
Is it one for the kindergarten? Yeah.
All right.
Laura, do we have someone for citizen speak? We don't. Okay. Approval of minutes.
I'll move the May 14th, 2014 minutes.
Second?
By Ms. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Zulus. Ms. Sheridan?
I have a question. So several times throughout the minutes, we have attachment written in parentheses on this. And when you go online and look at the minutes, there's no document that's attached to them. I mean,
In
obviously.
the link that shows in the
There isn't a
minutes?
link. So when it says attachment, there isn't a link, but, correct. But when there is a link listed in here, there is. So anything that's handed out should be somehow cross-referenced. So I just think if we could provide a link, if those things are already listed on our website somewhere else, or if they could be added in, I think that would be helpful. And that's throughout the majority of the minutes, so I won't say it every time.
Ms. Kelly?
Just, there are some school committees who actually, with their agendas and any materials that accompany it, that there's links. It may be something we want to think about on a going-forward basis, just to be as open and transparent as possible. And then typically, within the documents that are attached to the agenda are the documents that will be referenced in the minutes as well, so.
So sometimes it's a separate thing at the beginning of the agenda where it just says documents, or handouts, and they're listed there, so. Thanks.
Links are easy for us to do. I'll
Great.
follow up.
Thanks. On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous.
I'll move the May 21st to 2014 minutes.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Any discussion?
No.
On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous.
I'll move the June 4th, 2014 minutes.
Second?
Moved by Ms. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous.
I'll move the December 10th, 2014 minutes.
A second, sorry.
By Ms. Kelly, seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous.
I'll move the January 7th, 2015 minutes.
Thank you. Moved by Ms. Sherman,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Kelly. Any discussion? Ms. Sheridan?
So under the superintendent's report, topic 1, it says, Mrs. Padera asked if students who take the AP course could have to take the AP test, and if so, how much does it cost? And it said $91. So I think if there's a question asked, we should be sure that it's answered, and the answer to that question is yes. So if a student has to take the AP course, then yes, they do. If they take the course, yes, they have to take the test. It's expected that they take the test. Friendly amendment.
Well, in reading these minutes carefully, I noticed that there are a number of questions asked.
There are.
Yeah, I was
Some
going to say there's
some
a
of
bunch
which are
of it.
answered and some of which are not.
Right.
So I know that Ms. Downs is keeping very detailed notes, so I would say when it's answered, we should show the answer, and when it isn't,
You shouldn't
Shouldn't
show
it?
the question.
right. Okay. With that amendment, any other discussion? On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous.
We just did this.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of January 14th, 2015.
Moved by Ms. Sheridan,
Second. Mrs. Padera seconded.
seconded by Ms. Sheridan through Ms. Padera.
I was going to say, I was kind of influenced.
Strong-armed into it.
I'm looking at something.
Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? 501 or 6-0? Ms. Bagley Jones,
Are you voting in favor?
Oh, yeah.
if that was a yes? 6-0.
I'll move the February 4th, 2015 minutes.
Sorry.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
Kelly, seconded by Ms. Sheridan. Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? 501. Bagley Jones abstaining. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. I'd like to invite to the table to join us our English language learners coordinator and teacher, Elisa Buchanan. Welcome, Ms. Buchanan.
Now it's the covers over the notes.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about our English language education program tonight.
You might want to take that mic a little closer to you.
Sure.
Gentlemen, can you hear her?
Is that better?
Yeah. Do you have copies of that? Welcome.
Thank you. Okay.
By way of introduction, I should say that Ms. Buchanan is known at the state level in the world of ELL. You have done a phenomenal job growing a very small department to service a small number of children to a growing number of children. She works with the state to meet all of the mandates, but most importantly, she is committed to the children who join the Milton Public Schools, whose primary language isn't English. She takes great pride in bringing those children through their instruction, and on behalf of the system, I want to thank you. You are a tenacious educator and lobbyist and your expertise we've benefited from in the district. Our children have. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind introduction. I appreciate that. So I wanted, let's see. Okay. So this is a little bit about our students. We speak a variety of languages. We come from many different cultures. Families straddle. Some families are born in the United States but speak their native language, and other families, I'm sorry that my back is to you. Other families are born in their home country and emigrate to the United States. So children speak not only their home language and English, but sometimes they speak other languages too. So sometimes family members, their parents might speak 2 different languages at home, and then they're learning English at school. So they come with a variety of backgrounds, and our largest population of students speak Haitian Creole. Then for Chinese, it is Mandarin and Cantonese. I put them together even though they're 2 different languages. Spanish coming next, Vietnamese. Igbo is from Africa and Nigeria. Then we have students coming who speak Arabic, French, and then a smattering of other languages. So if there's mixed languages in the home, I didn't put them as just a pure language here. So this is what we look like in terms of the population in Milton. I included here, you'll see the ELL population. That's our current number that we declare in SIMS, the Student Information Management System. And this number right here is FELS, that's former ELLs. And I count them in the totals because we have to monitor the student progress for 2 years. So we still, even though we don't actively service the students, we still work with teachers to make sure that students are doing well in the schools. So even though our number looks like 64, we really have higher numbers because we want to make sure that everybody's doing well. So over the past 5 years that I've been working in the Milton Public Schools, we've seen a general overall increase. This I want to show you in 2012 to 2013, we had a high number of 72, and that number fell because we were able to flip students. So we were able to transition them out of the program because over these 3 years, we did put in a number of supports in place, which I'll talk about later, which contributed to students being reclassified or have a change of status, so they don't need English language education any longer. You may recall this slide from a previous presentation, but there are lots of acronyms in English language education. And I may use some of these interchangeably and not realize that I'm using them because they're just part of the language of my pedagogy. So an ELL is an English language learner. ESL is English as a second language, and that's the licensure that teachers have to be able to provide ESL support to students. FLEP or a FEL, they're both the same thing. FLEP is a former limited English proficient student, but it's kind of changed to a FEL, a former English language learner. ELPBO, the English language proficiency benchmarks and outcomes, those were the old standards. SEI, which you've probably heard a lot about, is sheltered English immersion, and that is a model of sheltering content for English language learners, which means really having a background in specific pedagogy for English language learners and making sure that teachers are aware of what this pedagogy is and how it relates to students' English proficiency levels, and then how they need to tweak and change their delivery and because of those factors.
Cut list.
WIDA are the world-class instructional design and assessment. Those are standards that apply particularly to English language education. ELE is English language education. The WAPT is the WIDA Access Placement Test. It's a screener that we use that's directly linked to the Access Test, which is an English proficiency assessment that we give annually. And that is assessing comprehension and communication in English, state to state, for English language learners. It's important to note that this assessment is state to state, so that if a lot of our student population is transient, so this assessment is wonderful because when I get it from another state, such as Rhode Island, who's used WIDA for quite some time, I have an understanding of what that level means and how it translates into how I can help that student. So it's very helpful that we have, we're part of that. We're part of WIDA, and we also give the access test and WAPT. The RETEL is Rethinking Equity and Teaching for English Language Learners. It is professional development here in Massachusetts that teachers who have an ELL student in their classroom are required to get an endorsement on their license. It's a little bit different than having licensure in ESL. It's, in essence, a certificate that's attached to their license, which makes them qualified to be able to provide instruction for ESL or ELL students. So a little bit of an overview of English language education. We're required to provide service for students by general law, Chapter 71A. All students are screened upon entering the Milton Public Schools. If students are eligible for services, they are placed in a sheltered English immersion classroom. So that's a general education classroom with support from an ELL trained teacher and also ESL licensed teacher. And service time is determined by students' proficiency levels. So I'll talk further about student proficiency levels and the amount of time, service time that we need to provide for students based on their proficiency levels. Parents are notified annually of initial placement and continuation of services, and parents can opt out of services at any time. Oops, sorry. Access for ELLs is our annual assessment and reporting of student progress in English and in content areas. So you may have been familiar with the MIPA. That was a former assessment that Massachusetts gave to determine English proficiency of ELL students. It did not assess students' English language in the content areas, and Access does. It's not only social language, but it's also academic language in English. And for exit notification and reclassification, we monitor students' progress for 2 years after exiting our ELE services, and we connect with teachers to make sure that if they need consulting time, if there's additional, if students are having difficulties and their profile seems skewed, we meet with teachers and make sure that if students need to come back into the program that they're eligible to do that, and we make sure that they're successful without ESL support.
Substantial edits and substantial adjustments.
So when I started in 2010, there were 1.5 teachers in our department. The teachers created the curriculum and aligned it to ALPO, the previous standards. There was limited space. Students didn't have necessarily traditional classroom space. There was limited support due to staffing. The students participated in MIPA, which only assessed their knowledge of English language, like I previously discussed. And there was limited classroom teacher participation and training for ELL students. You may have been familiar with the category training, and teachers were asked and encouraged to participate in this training in a good faith, but many teachers did not participate or participated in some trainings. Now we have 4 teachers, 3 full-time and 1.8. We have a standards-based curriculum that's aligned to the Common Core and WIDA standards. There's classroom space for all students. There's compliance with regulations for service time. We assess students with the Access for ELLs proficiency test. We now have SEI professional development, which is linked to licensure, and which teachers are required to participate in. And we're also the recipient of the Title III supplement grant, which we received last year. That was our first year receiving this federal grant, and this year is our second year. So it's exciting developments.
I had her add the percentages, that's on.
So you may wonder how we find students eligible for ELE services. As part of the registration packet, there is a home language survey that is translated into many different languages, and that is filled out as part of a typical registration.
Good enough job sending home memo.
Families are contacted. The WAPT screener is administered in all 4 language domains of speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Language proficiency and eligibility are determined. So there are 6 proficiency levels: entering, emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and reaching. And when students get to a level 6, they no longer need services, and at 5, they're at the cusp of transitioning out. We determine service time and support time by the state mandated guidelines. We are held to these guidelines. In the last CPR that we had, we were told that these guidelines should be the floor and not the ceiling, but we use them as they guide us in what we provide for students based on the screener that we administer. So students at a level 1 or 2 get 2.5 hours per day. At a level 3, 1 to 2 hours per day. At a level 4, 2.5 hours per week. A level 5, 2.5 hours per week. And a level 6, they're no longer eligible for services. They become a FEL, but we still monitor them.
If I might, Ms. Buchanan, so the school committee and the public understands that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regularly visit school districts. It's a tremendous amount of preparation, a coordinated program review, and they do a paper screening of students' records, and then they come into a district and do interviews with parents and staff. They do observations, and they evaluate special education programs, your civil rights procedures and practices, and English language instruction profiles of all of the children and the instruction.
And
So that's when Ms. Buchanan referred to, our program was evaluated by DESE, and part of our program review.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. So what is it that we use for our curriculum and instruction? So we use a standards-based curriculum that's aligned to the Common Core
I think that must have been it.
and WIDA.
She'll have to go downstairs. Is that okay?
Depending upon student proficiency levels, we push in to cooperatively teach readers and writers workshop lessons alongside classroom teachers. We also have a National Geographic curriculum that we use as our pull-out curriculum, and that's at the elementary and secondary levels. The curriculum is research-based, includes multicultural literature, as well as informational text in varied content areas. It also includes a lot of the cultures and stories of the students in our program. And it was wonderful when we implemented the curriculum to have students say, that's a celebration in my country, and I'm reading this and I'm celebrating it with my friends in my class. There are texts and interactive videos that build content, vocabulary, and language knowledge through National Geographic's real-world context. So, we studied about the Pacific Gyre, we've studied about, varied topics, and kids go on the internet and they find the actual videos, footage, photos of National Geographic documentarians, and they watch real-life footage, and they connect what they learn in class to real life. It's really amazing to watch them learn this way. And the curriculum has been so beneficial in moving us towards having a global and wider context for their English instruction. So what does our assessment look like? All students participate in MCAS tests that are designated for their grade level. The only exception was students in ELA in their first year in the United States. For MCAS, they were exempt in their first year here in the US. ELL students will participate in the PBA, the performance-based assessments, and the EOI, end-of-year PARC assessments. Students who have entered the Milton Public Schools after March 1st of 2014 and have come from their home country to the United States they do not need to participate in the ELA portion of PARC for their first year only, and it's optional for them to participate. But they will still need to participate in math and science exams. There are accommodations for our students when they're taking MCAS and PARC. They are permitted to use approved word-to-word dictionaries in their native language. This is only one word. It's a one-word translation. And students are also permitted to use a content area word-to-word glossary, so for math or for science. Oh, I forgot to mention too, students are allowed the extended time accommodation, and they are allowed to take the PARC assessment in a separate setting as well. So those students can take it with a familiar test administrator in a separate setting with extended time without a 504 or an IEP. So access for ELLs is a different assessment. It's a 4-part assessment administered in late January and February. ELE teachers receive online training and certification to administer assessment. So we participate in approximately 10 hours of online training to be able to administer the assessment. It is a standardized assessment which determines students' English proficiency level in the 4 domains of language: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And the score report includes students' proficiency levels in social and academic language. The academic language is measured for competency in language arts, math, science, and social studies. So those are the content areas that are measured as well. So after students are in the program, they've participated in participated in PARC and MCAS and Access, and we feel that they're at a level where they're ready to transition out of our ELE program. So how do we know that? We administer Access for ELLs, and that helps us to determine English proficiency. Then we take into consideration their MCAS and PARC performance. This year we'll we collect and analyze internal assessments, common assessments, and work samples. So we put together a portfolio on the student. We obtain classroom teacher input, and we monitor the student for 2 years to ensure success in the classroom. So, I want to point out to you that in 2012, if we go back to, can I just bring us back to this? So from 2012 to 2013, that's when we had our greatest number of students, okay? And then the following year, we did flip a large number of students. So I want you to keep that in consideration when we're looking at the data. So these are our district-wide elementary ELL MCAS scores for ELA. And as you can see, from 2010 to 2012, our students really had a large increase. And in 2012, or consistently showed growth. In 2012, we had the largest number of students who are flipped. And our students have then dropped off in the areas of, they've kind of leveled out in 2013, but then last year we had a slight dip. I attribute the dip to we have greater identification of students who are ELL and SPED students. We've consistently had greater numbers of students who, in the elementary schools, who have come in without English as their second language and haven't had exposure to English in their native countries. But that being said, we are putting many steps in place, which I'll talk about, to ensure student success. These are our scores in math. And as we were talking about in 2012, they've increased. And then in 2013 and 2014, we've seen a dip, and that's when our students, that's when we've had greater identification of SPED students and also SPED and ELL crossover, as well as having more students who came into the system who did not have a background with English and also were level 1s and level 2s. So coming in as non-speakers. These are the science scores. So we still have work to do, definitely. And then as we can see, in 2012, we had a very strong group take the grade 5 test. We had a very strong group of students become FLEPs. And when we have such a great number of students who transition out of the program, we have a tendency to have more students who are in the levels 1 through 3 who need more intervention and more support time and more service time. So these are the MCAS scores in ELA and math for the middle school. and this is for 6th grade. So it's showing growth over time. I also noticed a trend with the middle school where, if you see here, in 2013, and here, I attributed our students are eligible for support not only in English as a second language, but also in reading. And so our students have extra support time in ELA, with ELA. And also our middle school students, the majority of the middle school students have been coming in at later elementary, and so we haven't had necessarily as much time to grow the students as we have the elementary students. And the middle school students have been coming in with, the majority of our middle school students have been coming in from their native countries, and then have, we've identified more students with a crossover with SPED and ESL, and as well, we've had a lot of students over the past 2 years who are coming from countries that have, the students need a lot of emotional support because they're leaving their home countries because of situations of war, and a lot of students are political refugees. So we're trying to support students with a new set of challenges. So. And these are MCAS scores for grade 10 in ELA, math and science at the high school. In 2012, we had a dip at the high school, and we had an influx that year of 13 new ELL students to the high school, and the majority of the 13 were non-speakers. And so that was a challenge for us. And it was definitely challenging for not only our department, but also for teachers, and to support them in making sure that students had access to the curriculum, because when you're a non-speaker, it's very difficult to access high-level, biology, math, when you need to grow your English in order to access the curriculum. In terms of student growth, this was for math for last year. It was not available for ELA. But so it's showing that our students their growth is higher, but they're still low achieving. And so we do have some things that we're putting in place, and that we have put in place already in order to address the gap. What I did notice is that most third grade ELLs are generally scoring in needs improvement, with students reaching English proficiency by 5th grade. Most ELLs generally scored higher in 2012, which could be attributed to the introduction of our new curriculum that year. Middle school has generally increased each year from both ELA and math, although it's a small amount of growth, but it has increased. And the math SGP shows higher student growth, although we are putting in place other steps to close the proficiency gap. Some things that we are working on are, we are offering SEI courses for teachers and administrators. We've developed a district-wide course on WIDA professional development to give teachers a background into strategies that are effective for instruction in the classroom.
And Ms. Buchanan, will you share with the school committee and the public that all teachers who are going to be certified the requirement about this training?
So the SEI courses after July of 2016 are directly linked to teachers' licensure. So in order to advance your licensure or to the next level, teachers will need to participate in SEI endorsement courses, and based on previous training. So if teachers did go ahead and take category trainings in good faith, they take an abridged version of an SEI endorsement course, but the majority of teachers need to take the full endorsement course. And there is
Interesting that administrators also have to take the course.
administrators are required to take the course because they're supervising the teachers who have ELLs in their classes, and so that we can, as administrators, can be looking at effective strategies within the classroom for specifically targeting ELL students. We're working on curriculum enhancement right now through the advancement budget. We are purchasing WIDA progress monitoring tools. We're developing DDMs for our ELL students, and we believe that using a kit that's directly linked to WIDA, the Access for ELL's assessment, and the screener, we believe having all those tools in process and linked together will help us to better monitor student progress. We've implemented ELE student profiles or success plans, and because the majority of ELL teachers, or ELE teachers, are with students for a number of years, we have specialized knowledge about how to support the children. So we've been putting these plans in place. They have WIDA scores, their MCAS scores, ways in which to support the family best that we've learned over a few years. We also talk about student interests. So if students have a particular nonfiction interest and we want to get them reading right away to get them moving and move their reading levels, we just implemented these plans. We also have a checklist. It's a modifications checklist that looks at a student's proficiency levels in a way that teachers can modify curriculum based on a student's actual English proficiency. They take a long time to put together, but we hope that they'll be beneficial over the long run. We hope that teachers really use the information, and we do sit down with teachers who need a consultation or who really want to delve deeper into looking at those plans and how we can develop a more cohesive model between the classroom teacher and the ELL teacher to promote student success. We implemented last summer an ELE Summer Academy, and through the Title III grant that we received, and that was we started off with elementary school students, and this year we're going to expand it to middle and high school. We hope the thinking behind this is that we can continue to grow students' English over the summer so that they won't lose English over the summer months. Through the Title III grant, we've been working on family outreach. We had a very successful parenting program, or parent workshops last year in the spring at each school except for Glover, but the families at Glover came over to Collycott and Cunningham, and because there were only 2 families at that time. And we talked about the importance of summer reading. Through the Title III grant, we were able to provide some literacy materials for families. We talked about students' access scores and how to read the parenting report and what that report meant. And it was very successful And we had, our district partner is Canton. We write the Title III grant together, and we are the lead education agent on the grant. And they've come over to observe how we're supporting our families. And it was great to have our district partner come over and have a very successful event for them to observe and also try and emulate. And we are we're working with guidance counselors to provide additional social and emotional support for students. We have some students who've been through very traumatic situations, so we've been very mindful in how we're going to support students and how we go about as a learning community, how we support students who have this other layer to their learning. This is just a little bit more about RETEL. It's to support academic achievement of ELLs. It's specialized professional development. It is, for the majority of our teachers, it's quite lengthy, and it's a large commitment on their part. We're grateful for all the teachers that have, moved their lives around to participate in this professional development. It's not only for teachers of ELLs, but supervising administrators. And we talked about the course length being dependent upon the role of the course participant. So if they had previous category training or if they haven't. Now they're developing courses for reading and math specialists. It's different. I did also receive something today that there's specialized training for nurses in RETEL, which is really exciting. Just ways to reach families and how we change what we do. Then we've had over 50 Milton Public School teachers who've enrolled in or completed the courses, and 13 administrators. And the course, the SEI endorsement course is directly linked to licensure in July of 2016. So some of our successes over the past 5 years have been receiving the Title III grant. It is a supplement, not a supplant grant, so it's used to supplement what we already have in place. It was very successful last year, and we're hoping to recreate some of that success this year and also extend the program to the high school students. We have had great student and family participation. When we have meetings, we have them before school, right when there's drop-off. We've found that the majority of the families can come in the morning and drop their children off and then go into work a little bit later. We've been working with diversity committees. We've had PTO partnerships and other family events. We had a Mother's Day tea last year, and the students showcased their work, and we invited the families in, and not only mothers came, there were fathers too. So our out-of-district partnership is with Canton right now on the Title III grant. We've had parent and guardian workshops. We're developing our own localized professional development, and now we have a summer program for the students. And the summer program curriculum also is aligned to WIDA. So here are some of our students. Last year we had a student who came in second place in the Massachusetts Science Poetry Contest, the only elementary student in Milton to receive acknowledgement. And so it was really wonderful that he was an ELL student from our program. This is a great photograph for me because it was the first time that I ever saw students wearing kipao, their traditional dress, in school. This is part of the Mother's Day tea, students working. its father. Another wonderful success for our department is we had a Teacher of the Year, Mrs. Mary Duggan, was Teacher of the Year at Tucker Elementary School last year, and she's an ELL teacher in our department. And these are just ways to say thank you in the myriad of languages of our district. Thank you.
Sarah?
So I think that it's hard to kind of measure with the data that you showed, the success of the, because it's not the same students, right? You're having different students every year that you're measuring. So I'm just wondering if we could, because once they become proficient, they're not measured anymore, right? So it'd be so nice to see the one set of students and follow them and measure how the increase in staffing has worked in terms of getting them, you know, proficient maybe faster, or later on how much more successful they're doing, or how much faster they're doing better at being proficient. So I don't know how you do, I don't know if we can do that, because that's what I'd really like to see. In a way, especially with ELL students, kids from all different backgrounds, all different levels, you're kind of, every year is a different group. So how do you measure that, even if one's high and one's low? To me, that doesn't really say much about the success of how we're doing there. What I'd love to see is a group of those students and follow them, how they're doing, even after they become proficient. And also look at not just their test scores and how they're doing, but the ones that seem to be doing really well, what else are they doing? Are they, you know, the poetry and the science award is a perfect example. Is there somebody that's playing, you know, students that are more active, have other activities, have increased social support, emotional support, or, you know, strong family support at home. Maybe they're musical, or they're involved in art, or involved in sports. Do those activities help? So that's what I'd really love to see, because it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job. I just don't think the data is really something that data doesn't show us what we want to see, and that's what you have.
It was so hard to put together the data, because we have students who will be with us for a year, and then the next year it's such a transient population that sometimes it's hard to even track kids over even a few years, because they do move in and out a lot.
Right.
But I can only say this like anecdotally, that I noticed that the commitment, the level of commitment on the teacher's part in our department in trying to get kids involved in after-school activities, music, doing outreach to Marty, and making sure that families have what they need in order to have their child be successful in out-of-school experiences, but that are linked to their in-school success. We've really tried very hard to make sure that kids are active in our after-school programs, our CAS programs, and it's very hard to document that. But if you had a suggestion or a way that you felt like we could best do that, I would be willing to do that.
I honestly think it would be great, not just for ELL, but all programs where we're seeing students of high needs that generally don't do well in these types of tests, or the ones that do seem to do better. I'd love to see other measurements there of, you know, what are those students maybe doing that other students aren't, and what are we doing that is successful with those students to improve their general performance, not just on test scores. But the other thing I was going to say, just to have you speak to this, because the increase in staffing, I think, allows, because I know that I would say at least 3 or 4 years ago, students that moved into the district, they might be at one school, but the support was at another, so we would have to move them. And I think that's a big disruption and harder, you know, instead of being around the students in your neighborhood, you'd have to move to a different school, and the parents might not know, you know, those other parents, and it's a disruption. So I think that increase in staffing must have changed that, because it sounds like you have teachers at every elementary school now.
We do. We do have teachers at every elementary school. And I do agree with you in terms of making sure that families can be at their home school, or if they live near a school and they want their child to be with their friends in their neighborhood. I definitely I understand that as an educator and as a parent in town, from those different perspectives, and we want students to be successful in the school that's, that's right for their family. And we really try and make sure that if they need service time, that we get a teacher there for them. And, there may be a time where we need to increase staffing in the future as we get better at our identification processes, and as we do give them more support time, sometimes kids just transfer in the middle of the year. So,
Yeah.
so we try to be cognizant of that.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Kelly?
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's great. A couple questions. So for those students who are categorized as a level 1 or level 2, where 2.5 hours of their day are in a separate setting, is that correct?
So we pull them out or we push into the class, depending upon either the content area, because sometimes if the kids are doing a hands-on experiment or activity, they should be in the classroom and having us help them with we might pull them out beforehand and teach them vocabulary and give them exposure to the concept, and then be in the classroom with the teacher when they're actually participating in that experience, so that they can hear other kids and native speakers, and we really want them to have access to their same age linguistic counterparts, so that that can fuel their language so much faster than just providing them ESL support. So, but we do pull them out for service time also.
So the 2.5 hours per day is not necessarily outside of the classroom, it's just services in general?
It's services in general, yeah.
Got it. And so how do you, I don't know how you do what you do, quite frankly, with the number of students across all levels, across all schools. How do you do that? I just,
So we have
with
to-
only 4 teachers?
We have to have split positions, so there are teachers who, will, for example, the high school and middle school teachers are there for 4 periods a day, and then they go to another school to help us at the other schools based on the proficiency levels of the students. And so some years we'll have, for example, last year we had 2 teachers at Tucker, 1 full-time and then 1 just 2 periods in the afternoon. And this year we needed to shift it to Collycott and Cunningham based on the proficiency levels of the students. So we have to shift around, and it also, it changes in the middle of the year because students will come in and we won't know. So sometimes it can be really challenging because we'll have to mix up the schedules in the middle of the year, and that's hard for classroom teachers and also us, but we make it work.
And so, Ms. Kelly, if I might.
Yes.
So I think that, to Ms. Kelly's point, you can understand the commitment to this program is similar to a special education program. To me, these are contracts. We have a commitment, and we're very, very lucky to have Ms. Buchanan. To your point about scheduling, she's constantly monitoring the scheduling, making sure that FLUP, right, where the students who flupped out are monitored, and this is a constant position, and they've you should be complimented. You maximize the employees and monitor these students constantly.
Thank you.
And could you just describe a little bit about the summer program, because that sounds...
Oh, sure. So last year we had, it was held at Milton High School, and from 8 to 10 were the 3rd through 5th grade students, and from 10 to 12 were the kindergarten through 2nd grade students. And we had an ELL trained teacher who would work with those students for 2 hours a day. And they used it's called Camp Can Do, because in the WIDA standards, for each proficiency level, there are can-dos. So instead of talking about what a student can't do, it frames it as a positive, what students can do in the classroom. And so the Camp Can Do is aligned with the can-dos of the WIDA. And it breaks it down. It's very hands-on. It has lots of visuals with it. And the teacher who provided the support last year was wonderful. We also had some additional monies to provide something that we called in-house field trips, where we had the first and second graders last year were learning about farm to market. And so we had Brookwood Farm come in and do some farm education. We had a beekeeper come in to talk to the kids about pollination and the role of pollinators. We also had we had a drama teacher come in to do improv and some speaking and drama activities to promote their social language as well. So that was really exciting. And those in-house field trips happened on Thursdays. And so the summer program was 5 weeks, but for 4 weeks, every Thursday, we were able to provide one of those in-house field trips. So it made it that the kids really wanted to be there, because if they knew that every Thursday there was this great experience, and parents loved it too.
That's great.
We were also able to provide transportation for students who had, that was written into the grant, so that students who typically wouldn't be able to attend the summer program had transportation, which was very exciting, challenging to set up, but it was great that the students were able to attend. And it just happened that the majority of the students that needed transportation, they wouldn't have had, their parents wouldn't have been able to, there was no way to finagle transportation at all through a friend, or because they didn't necessarily have community relations just yet. But now, as we've introduced families and created more opportunities for discussion and meeting and community building, we'll have less of those students who had transportation last year. But it was very positive.
That's great.
And Ms. Buchanan should get credit. She took the lead on that grant. The Canton Public School Superintendent told me how much Canton learned during their visits, and we wouldn't have been able to run that summer program if it weren't for the grant.
Thank you.
Did any of those children stay for the regular summer school for the balance of the day?
We did. We had students who participated in the reading program, and I believe there might have been one student who didn't participate in the whole morning, but with the exception of that one student, the children either participated in the reading support program and ELL support program, or they were in ELL support and then they did summer enrichment.
It's wonderful.
Sheridan?
So this was a wonderful presentation. It was so comprehensive, really helpful to people who don't know anything about English language learners, so thank you for that.
Oh, sorry. Mrs. Padero's hogging the microphone. I'm so glad you mentioned the can-dos, because I think so often when we talk about English language learners, we talk about what they can't do. And that's a big part of the WIDA is, acknowledging what they can do and celebrating that. So that was exactly one of the points I was going to make. So I was really glad to hear that that's the focus of your summer program, because there is a lot that they can do, and we just need to celebrate that and build on those successes. One of the things that when you talked about the different levels of the students, it would be helpful, I think, just for the general viewing public to get a sense of how many level 1s, how many level 2s going forward, just because that really plays a role in the demands on your time. I have one school, K-8, I have more ELLs in my 500 students than you do across the district. So the scheduling piece that Mrs. Kelly was talking about is just almost nightmarish when you try and cover those hours and provide the services. So you are doing such a good job at that, and to be commended. And then just finally, I want to say the success plans are another great strategy that you've put in place, and I think that having your eyes on those kids and sharing that information with parents and staff, it's just really important work. So thank you for all you're doing for our students.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
Thank you for the presentation, and I think that you have such a positive outlook on this program. It helped me because, frankly, not that I think MCAS are the be-all to end-all, but to see the amount of kids that are at this level was very disheartening, especially in a town like Milton, where we're used to kids doing really well on our MCAS and other tests. So that was a little discouraging, but I appreciate you. I learned a lot, and I appreciate that. I had a couple of small questions. How long do you have on this grant? You might have said that, and I missed it.
How long do we have on?
The grant?
The grant, so it's a grant per year, so a school year. So it goes, so this year, the grant will end in August.
Okay.
So each year, we have to apply for the grant.
Okay, okay. But there's a possibility we could keep getting it?
Yes.
Okay, all right, great. And then the other question I had was languages for the parents. Do you have, how do, you obviously have staff that speak their languages if they don't speak English, right? So
we work with interpreters often. We, for parent-teacher conferences, we bring in interpreters to make sure that that we can communicate with families. And we also have family members who come along to conferences to make sure we do speak some languages in our department, but not every language of the families.
Okay.
But we find ways to communicate with families. And I can say that, typically, there have been times when teachers they're not sure how to communicate with families, so they come to me, and I make sure that we hold students to the same standards, behavior-wise, educationally, and then when we need to communicate, we find a way to do that, because we want students to be successful.
Okay, thank you.
So we've had families that are, they're non-speakers of English, and they are at school, they are participating in programs, even though they do not speak the language.
That's wonderful.
And Ms. Buchanan has done a tremendous amount of work sending the memos home in their respective languages.
Good.
We got over that hurdle.
Yeah, I remember that. And then the other thing, the last question was around professional development for the adjustment